All right, welcome back to another episode of Health Without the System. I'm Dr. Tim Scott.
And I'm Mia Scott. Welcome back, everyone. For our first-time listeners, welcome. This will be a good episode for you, a big recap coming your way.
Yes, so this is our Season 2 finale. This will be episode 48 of the podcast. And we're going to talk about a topic we've been wanting to kind of chat about for a while. And then we're actually going to do a quick recap of the episodes we did this season, highlighting some major conversation points and things to take home with you this summer. And of course, we will pick the podcast back up in about 2 months, sometime in August.
Yeah, the reason for the break, we are so incredibly busy. We are gearing up for a next good season, lining up some good podcast guests, and a very awesome convention coming at the end of the year, which we will also discuss as well.
For sure. We also have to do our Menopause Society certification.
Yep.
We're still waiting to find out.
Vacations, kiddos, summer, all the things. So a well-deserved break here, and we will regroup. But until then, let's dive on in.
Okay, no problem. So, you're the one that sort of mentioned this. You had seen some social media posts, and of course, we've all seen it, but sort of irritated you. Let's call it the GLP-1 shaming. And let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so I was scrolling through Facebook, and somebody was my friend. I to be honest, I don't even know how I was her friend in the first place, but she made some just generalized statement, and she was basically saying, we need to do better. Actually, I should just read it to you, but shaming people who are trying to use GLPs as a tool for their weight loss journey. And this gets a lot of negative, shaming because people feel like that they shouldn't be on something that is just so beneficial for them. And the reason why is because all these people that shame them for using it the wrong way are thinking that they're just weak for choosing a GLP.
Right.
This is what her post said. Fact. Weight loss is 80% diet. Choosing Ozempic is basically saying you have no control over what you're putting in your body. #do better. And the fact that, to me, it just made me so sad for my patients who feel like that they have to suffer in silence, and they know that that's not the case with me. But for these generalized statements, it is so way too broad for somebody to say this, not understanding the mechanism behind biology, pathophysiology,
neurohormones,
anatomy.
Yeah.
There's so many things that go into play with this for saying that is
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
some
that's a
control.
non-medical person.
It was a non-medical person.
Which most of them are.
I will take that back where she's not medical, but she really pushes the naturopathic stuff, which is
great. Yeah.
We love dabbling in that, but there's a time and a place where you come in and help somebody who's doing everything that they can.
Also, there's a fine line between natural, right? GLP-1s are a peptide.
Right.
Insulin's a peptide, right? Certain hormones, just because they come in a patch, right? They're the complete analog of what our body makes. Is that considered natural? How much more natural can you be?
Your body. Yeah. And I'm not one to post back. To be honest with you, I really don't have time. But this kind of really rubbed me the wrong way because I'm like, I cannot believe. I just knew how many people were reading her posts and immediately felt shame. Like, dang, I'm basically just, I can't do this myself. And that's not the case. And yes, and I very nicely commented in saying I respectfully very much so disagree, and went into how we are set up for if it was just that easy, that'd be great. But you got to look at our environment. You got to look at our food system, the way it's processed to be so freaking addictive for you to gain weight like nothing. And then when obesity sits in, or it sets the stage for obesity, then you have multiple factors going against you.
You have biological things you can't control. And we've talked about how, once you get a little bit insulin resistant, it becomes a lot harder to process that glucose and lose weight. We've talked about how as you build visceral fat, that sort of acts as the bad apple, right? It touches the other fat around it. It releases hormones and cytokines and starts cascades in your body that you can't control.
Yeah, and it was just a really crappy post. And I actually ended it with saying, I really hope this was just an algorithm boost for you because this was so not appropriate to do. And I did acknowledge, yes, you're not wrong saying that majority of these things can be turned around with diet. However, I said, then tell me what you think diet is, because majority of patients are taught by their PCP what their diet should be. And I'm using my little air quotes, should be. And majority of people don't even know what a good diet is. So you have to address that issue first.
Right, because the PCPs, no offense, again, they
are not taught right diet.
They're not taught correct dieting, and B, even if they have gone above and beyond and they know it, you have about 15 minutes in a visit with a patient if you're lucky as a PCP, right? You can't teach them. We take an hour on a visit with somebody, and that's step one. We're like, this is step one. We're going to send you so much more information. This is going to be a journey, right? And you just can't do that in a PCP's office.
Yep. And she got really nasty with me. She actually DM'd me on the side, and it took about 3 days, and then she blocked me, which is like, and I'm like, this is an open conversation. Like, to each their own. I just thought it was a really shitty way for her to get her point across, to shame others. Mind you, that over 80% of our population actually can qualify for a GLP, so that's astonishing in itself. And I'm like, it's the system, so you can't blame the person. Yes, obviously they have control over things, but you can't give them the wrong tools and then expect them to do well. Meaning, give them the standard American diet, tell them to exercise. What does that mean? And we see this every single day where somebody thinks that they're quite literally doing everything that they possibly can to help with their weight loss journey, and they are stuck, and they're depressed, and they're not doing well.
And they're horrible, so horribly off base with what should be happening, right?
Sure.
And that's not the case, and it's a spectrum, like you said. But I like to think about it like this. What if somebody comes into the primary care physician's office and gets diagnosed with sleep apnea and they're put on a CPAP machine? Do we get on there and say hashtag do better?
Yeah.
You know,
hashtag breathe better.
Yeah. Hashtag open your nostrils while you're sleeping. Do we get on there, you know, when you walk in and get diagnosed with high blood pressure? What's the first thing the doctor does? Writes the prescription for the blood pressure medicine. Now, I will say good doctors say, hey, our goal is for this to be temporary. We're going to make lifestyle changes to get you off it. But they still use this tool in the meantime. Same with diabetes medicine. I mean, in certain diabetes medicines are associated with a certain amount of weight loss. Metformin, it's low, but it's 6% weight loss. Like, are you shamed when you get that? So I genuinely don't understand why this is considered cheating or shameful or do it naturally, especially if you can't. And like Mia said, the system's rigged against you. It's the marketing, it's the box, it's the labels. Until you have your eyes open to this. 7 years ago, I was in the same position. I am a smart person. I am an educated physician. I'm board certified. I would have been tricked by 90% of the marketing at the grocery store till we got this extra education, and we spent time, years learning it, you know. And again, how much time does it take up? Okay, I used the Yuka app, Yuka. I liked that app. This doesn't ding foods for seed oils, which is annoying. But anyway, it was a great tool to start with. Guess what? I used it about 4 times before I didn't need it anymore. Right.
Before you pick up on huge chemicals that you're like, I shouldn't be consuming this. Right. And just like Tim said, it just blows my mind how like we can bucket people as, oh, it's okay, you have high blood pressure. But when somebody wants to lose some weight to prevent all of those things, it's shameful. And oddly enough, with that comment that I made, I mean, I made a few of them, but that main comment that I made, I had over 20 people like it. And I know that those are people that were, some of them were my patients, some of them I know that you just know that they're suffering. And I'm like, that is not, like, this is why people suffer in silence, because people who make these insane allegations, there's so much more that goes into than just watch what you put in your mouth. Because I'm like, yes, I understand that. That makes very much sense. But sit down and talk to somebody and say, what do you know about health food? And I bet you that they don't. And we had a few people comment on that post saying, well, if they are diabetic, then that's the only way I would start, support a GLP. I'm like, you guys you're
not
ignorant.
Thinking
you're
of
not
it correctly.
Like we're reactive, or in Western medicine, you want to be proactive. So you're shaming somebody who's obese, who's trying to lose weight and trying to get to their goals without any other underlying issues, no blood pressure, no cholesterol, no diabetes yet. But then the second they cross that line,
that number. So I just talked to a patient today, right?
Yeah.
Their fasting glucose was 98. Guess what? That is not considered pre-diabetic. That's not considered anything. It's technically considered normal. That is insulin resistant. When you hit the number 100, you are now considered insulin resistant. So you're telling me, based on these people's, the way they view it, well, if you're diabetic, you have to wait 6 more months until that glucose goes up 2 more. Come on.
Right.
Get out of here. Like, people want to take control of this, right? Like,
and then she went after me on the hormone thing, and she's like, that's just a big scam gimmick as well. And I'm like, okay, I just will not entertain that, because the amount of time it would take me to educate somebody that naive and ignorant would take me years.
And here's the thing, like, we don't go out trying to change people's minds on Facebook. I think or anywhere.
No, I was just standing up for my
right. I
patients.
think it's about presenting the other perspective for people who don't quite have the voice to. Like some people, your patients, people who aren't medical, don't know how to respond with the same words you do. They don't know how to use the words insulin resistance, risks for cardiovascular disease. They don't understand that, 1 in 3 women are still going to have, cardiovascular. I mean, all these issues that are out there, they need us to do that. And that's what we do. There's no conversation I have with anybody where I ever am trying to change their mind or convince them. But what I do present are statistics and facts, when I can.
Yeah. So anyway, we just really wanted to start that conversation because absolutely one of the most interesting things that we've watched quite literally all year long. And honestly, since we've even opened up our practice is the way that people can be treated when they decide to take a GLP and take control of their life. And I'll tell you, it's not a positive thing to outsiders, the response that they get from family or friends or people on social media. I mean, it's completely shaming, and we have to look at it from a metabolic standpoint. And listen, guys, I get it. A decade ago, I was the same, saying, just watch what you put in your mouth. It's that easy, which in theory to that, it can be that easy, but you have to have the willpower, the lack of multiple comorbidities you already have going against you. Once you cross that line into overweight and obesity, given you've probably gotten there because you thought you were educated about the food system, which go back to our food pyramid episode and all the other things, it is a really long journey to get to your goals. And why are we not using this as a tool?
It's not also a Band-Aid. The change, the lifestyle change, the weight loss, the prevention, all of it. It's mental, physical, and emotional. And I think that's what needs to be addressed, right? It's not just willpower. It's not just education on food labels. It's also your relationships, your support network, your job, your stress, your sleep, your kids, your spouse. There is so much that goes into it. And if it were that easy, then 92% of the American population would not be metabolically dysfunctional. If you check their 92% are considered metabolically dysfunctional. And, it's up to 8% of white women are obese. I think it's African American and Hispanic women are obese. These are facts. These are statistics from the United States government. So if it were that easy, it wouldn't be like this.
And once again, this is why this podcast is called Health Without the System, because, contrary to what people think on the internet, for some people like this internet, troll, whatever you want to call her, our goal is to get all of our patients out of the system, to give them knowledge, to give them power, to give them resources for free, like this podcast, to say, you can do it without medications. You can also come to us and have the assistance of some potential medications and get to your goal. We will never tell you that this is a Band-Aid approach. It's not a pill for an ill. We fix root cause, underlying metabolic dysfunction. We talk to all of our patients about lifestyle. Most of our metabolic patients get a metabolic, body composition scale. We do it the right way, which is why we were so passionate about our practice, which is why it really rubbed me the wrong way. And then one of her last comments was like, haha, like coming from somebody who owns their own metabolic clinic. I'm like, yeah, but why do you think I did that? You think it would have been easier to stay in the hospital and work a 9-to-5 job and not own my own company? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Our lives have gotten significantly crazier.
Significantly harder with our own practice. However, the rewarding benefit.
And we don't make more money. I'll say that.
No, we don't. But it's the benefit of our patients and the people that we serve in our community, and seeing comments on Facebook saying, I see Mia, I'm so happy. I see Megan, one of our other great providers. She's changed my life. Like, those are the things that I know that as a PCP, it would have been a pill for an ill, versus what I'm doing now. It's truly my passion. And I told her, I was like, well, duh, it's a business, but that doesn't mean for an absolute second that I care less about my patients or more about money when it comes to my own practice. If
that argument is so stupid to say. I mean, look at any business out there, right? So like, oh, you're a realtor, like, oh, I just want to put you in a house and get money. Like, no, of course they're trying to help you find your dream home. They enjoy that with you. And yes, they're going to get paid for what they do. Like,
and she was selling, supplements, natural. And I said, what is the freaking difference between me having my metabolic practice because I can prescribe and you can't because you're not medical, which is fine. But then you're pushing your agenda and I'm pushing mine, which is fixing my patients. And to me, it was wrong.
Okay. So just a quick recap. This is not meant to be all about GLP-1s and stuff, but we did want to put this out there for our audience who listens. And maybe you're thinking about GLP-1, maybe you're on one, or maybe you know someone who is. We just want you to have some facts and an approach. Yeah. Real quick, GLP-1s are still a tool. They are not a magic weight loss pill. I say that, or shot. I say that on every single first visit when I talk to somebody. body. This is a tool. Sustainable success, it requires lifestyle change. We are going to give you the knowledge so you have the power. That is exactly what we say to everybody. And our goal is not at all for people to be on a medication forever. The goal is to use it as a tool. And some people, 6 months, sometimes 12 months, sometimes it takes a couple years. You didn't get in this situation overnight. If you are significantly obese, if you have a lot of metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance, and it takes time to change. But we should stop shaming people for using tools in an appropriate and healthy way. And the real victory, the end goal here is not, I want to be skinny and whatever is considered beautiful. The goal is, yes, get to skinny, get comfortable in your body, but it's avoiding diabetes. It's avoiding cardiovascular disease. It's increasing your mobility. It's extending your health span, not just your lifespan. Health span is the years spent active, healthy, doing what you love to do. It's becoming what you want from yourself. And so it's frustrating.
It's funny because when you hear that line, because she actually, that girl who posted the same thing about like, skinny's not healthy. And I was like, who in the world? I don't think I've ever told a single patient of mine, I'm going to get you skinny. No, I'm saying I'm going to get you metabolically stable. I'm going to correct your labs. I'm going to give you more energy for life. I'm going to give you more, energy to hang out with your kiddos or grandkids or whatever you want to do in life. We will make it as best as we can to make it easier and less exhausting and, whatever the case may be. Like Tim said, mobility, all these things. I don't think I've ever told a patient in my life, I'm going to get you skinny.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't even it doesn't even cross my mind.
I say, I'm going to help you reach your goals. And I say, but weight loss is a side effect of what we're going to do here.
That's just a little cherry on top. You're going to lose some weight, but in the meantime, we're going to make you feel pretty good doing it. So anyway, entire story there, guys. If you're on the fence and you're wanting to, help with a GLP to get to your metabolic issues or what maybe they've already developed, please reach out. Don't be afraid of these fear-mongering things that you hear on the internet. If you talk to any one of our patients, they will tell you that we've changed their lives. And it is your life to live, nobody else's. And that's what I got for that one.
ricksthehealth.com for that. Yep. All right, let's recap season 2 here. We just kind of want to run through the episodes, have a little chat. Maybe you didn't catch them all and you just want to hear us briefly chat. Or maybe you're new to this. So Season 2, Episode 1, we talked about the new U.S. food pyramid and dietary guidelines. So this was updated on January 7th of 2026.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We'll run through the major takeaways here. I would highly encourage you guys to go back and listen to that one as well. But
realfood.gov is a great website.
Yeah. Main takeaways there, the dietary guidelines finally began moving back towards whole foods, which is just wild that we have to even say that in the first place. Like, we're recommending to eat more whole foods. It's like, well, duh.
So cool. Real Food wins. If you go to realfood.gov. Yeah, so check out that website. Sorry,
awesome.
Keep going. Yeah, sorry.
Protein regained importance, which is amazing. And then ultra-processed food, it is becoming a main focus of how problematic it can be, which again is absolutely massive. Is it over 80% of our food in the grocery store is processed?
God, I don't remember that stat, but it's
high
it's
up
a lot.
There. All of that is in the food.
Remember, stay to the periphery, right? The periphery of the grocery store is where you're going to normally find your fresh, expirable foods.
Yep.
It's so funny. I had someone arguing with me at work recently because they told me they recently made a loaf of sourdough bread and it went bad in 4 days. And she's like, I'm going to stick to my bread. I can keep it in the pantry for 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, do you not understand what you just said?
Right. It's so backwards. But that's the mindset of thinking. And I used to think like that too. Like when I get produce, like my strawberries, I'd be like, they're bad in 3 days. I'm not buying these anymore. I'm like, no, that's actually good. I'm basically telling my kids, you have to eat way more fruits and vegetables so we don't, have
and obviously that means there's less preservatives on it, less sprays on it, pesticides. I mean, everything less.
Very beneficial.
Cool.
But,
Whole foods over ultra processed. Last thing I want to say about that real quick. People will ask all the time, and I say this on my first call with a lot of patients, what's the best diet? Is it Miami, keto, Mediterranean? Well, we do follow probably the Mediterranean lifestyle diet the most, but make it easy. Just eat real food. Right. Eat real food. If it came from the air, the water, the earth, try to get organic when you can, but just real things that expire and go bad.
Think about the less processed mechanism it took to get to your plate, the better. So for example, strawberries, they pick it, they wash it, they put it in a container, it gets shipped on a truck versus cereal. That goes into a incredible process.
First you got the grain, and then that has to get milled.
And then that's sprayed with glyphosate, and then it has to get smushed down, all the other chemicals and stabilizers and all the things, because remind you that has a shelf life. This is a very good, easy tool to remember. If you can take a food and go out and bury it in your backyard, and a year or two or however many years later you go back to it, it's still edible, that's too processed. And mind you, majority of these things in a processed container will still be edible years to come.
So they did also revisit healthy fats, which I was excited about. Full fat dairy, butter, and even beef tallow are acceptable in certain contexts. Again, still within limitation. We never, say, sure, go out and eat 100, grams of saturated fat every day. But we're getting away from that concept that fat makes you fat. It's not fat that makes you fat. What makes you fat is the processed carbohydrates, the sugars, and all the processing of the American
seed oils,
diet.
alcohol, very, very high concentrated.
So go ahead, guys, and we very much encourage this. Get your whole fat organic Greek yogurt. Get your whole fat milks organic if possible. Get your grass-fed butters. Your fats are okay from this. Again, in context,
Yeah. Yep.
Don't be like our daughter Lola and try to eat a stick of butter every day.
Well, she's getting better about that. But, the food supply has changed faster than human biology, which is why this is, such a big deal to have this change, because the average American eats foods that, their grandparents would essentially barely recognize. And we took, whole foods, protein, natural fats in, years ago, and still to this day, which is why it's a problem. We've replaced them with ultra processed food, refined carbs, oils, added sugar, added everything, additives. So this is why this movement was so huge, and hopefully we'll have some good progress moving forward, because we don't want more obesity and more diabetes and more autoimmune issues that we're seeing today.
I think it's also worth mentioning that these guidelines shape menus for school lunches, military food, and federal nutrition programs.
Yeah.
So getting an actual update on this was big. It's not just recommending to people what to do. And there's actually even another campaign that's recently gone on. I think 4 U.S. military bases, the RFK actually got rid of half of the crap from it, and they're getting real food on there. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the details of the story, but it's just an effort to actually grow this movement of please eat real food, not processed garbage. It was showing that the U.S. government was paying, these numbers aren't exactly right, I'd have to look it up. Let's say they were paying, $20 a meal for our soldiers, and the soldiers weren't eating it. They were throwing it in the garbage and going off base and getting Burger King and stuff because the food was so horrible. Mm-hmm. They've actually got the meals, and it might actually even be cheaper than that number. It's real local food, local connections, local farmers, and the soldiers are actually eating it like, wow, this is good. So anyway,
absolutely.
Pretty cool stuff.
And why would we not feed our soldiers the best food in the entire world? Organic, non-processed, like top of the actual, absolute line. But anyway, when it comes to, just wanted to say here, because a lot of people say this is where it comes down to what you put in your body and what your environment, plays out how your body responds to things. So for example, like I said, when we have more diabetes, more autoimmune, infertility issues, more inflammation, your body isn't failing. Our bodies aren't just like failing out of nowhere. They are responding to the environment that it's given. Processed food, and then your epigenetics are responding to environmental triggers, mold, heavy toxins, heavy metals, alcohol, vape pens. Things go on and on that you're exposing yourself to daily, and your body eventually will no longer be able to compensate, and then disease progression will start. So remember, yes, absolutely, it does start with food, but first you need to understand what good food is. Check out the food pyramid episode.
Yes, and I don't know what I did to click, but the next episode...
disruptors.
Okay, yeah, so season 2, episode 2 was endocrine disruptors. Can you talk about that for a minute, because my computer's dying.
So major takeaways with these endocrine disruptors are essentially things in the environment that can mimic our own endocrine system, and they can bind to these sites, and you basically trick our body to thinking that that is a true hormone on some of these cells, and it's not. They're endocrine disruptors, which leads to a disaster of things in our body. So everyday chemicals can and will interfere with hormonal signaling. BPA, phthalates, pesticides, and plastic, they can affect so many different things: estrogen, testosterone, thyroid function, fertility, brain fog, autoimmunity, cancers, mold, all these other things, the list goes on and on. Hormones operate through an incredibly sensitive signaling pathway, which means the more that these are disrupted, the worse things can get for our body. So the environmental exposures can decline our hormones like testosterone. It can cause metabolic issues, inflammation, and earlier puberty. We are also finding that a lot of these toxins and endocrine disruptors can cause early puberty in our little kiddos. So that's like the microplastics, the water bottles, the things, the foo-foo things that you guys put in your car to hang, what are they called? The things make it smell good.
Christmas tree air fresheners.
Yeah, what the heck are those called?
Air freshener. An air
Is that what they're
freshener.
called?
Yeah.
I've never.
A pine one.
Yeah, we haven't had one
yeah.
in 20 years. So
Yeah.
stop buying
I
those
always,
things.
I always think of, for my guys out there, I think of your Axe body
Yep.
spray. Oh my God. I
Oh,
remembered
so bad.
the Axe. It was like a black can with gold writing on it. I can't remember what it was called, but oh my God, I sprayed that on all the time in college. I thought I was just the sexiest beast alive.
When somebody walks by and it just reeks of cologne, I'm just
Oh
like,
my
I
gosh,
can't.
nowadays, I
It's
can't
too
even
much.
handle
It is too much.
A cool thing we mentioned in this episode, well, it's not cool. An interesting thing is the atrazine effect. Look up atrazine in the frogs, where it turned male frogs female. Very interesting.
Yep.
And this is the power of endocrine disruptors. Look up atrazine, look up the frogs.
Or what episode is in that? The endocrine disruptors,
Yeah,
probably.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so listen to that podcast
Or
if you
listen
want
to
to
it.
hear
Yeah,
about
sure.
that. It's pretty cool.
I guess I should encourage people to listen to our
listen
podcast.
to us, guys. Listen to us and share us. Bottom line, your environment will always be influencing your hormones, whether you realize it or not. And the goal here with the endocrine disruptors is not perfection. Why? Because we live in such a toxic sludge that you will never be perfect on avoiding all of these endocrine disruptors and hidden exposures. The goal is lowering the toxic burden, and any little small change over time will matter. So if you guys have no idea what I'm talking about when I say the toxic burden or the emptying your barrel, there is a book called The Rain Barrel Effect by Dr. Stephen Cabral. I think you can get it free off of his website. You just have to pay like $5 for shipping. And that really was the tipping point to me to understand that our body quite literally is like a rain barrel that fills up to the top. And once it's full to the top, that's where leakage and spillover happens, and that's where you get really symptomatic. Your body can only tolerate so many things before it starts to lose its regulation, and this is all of the environmental toxins that we were talking about. And mind you, we have never lived in more of a toxic sludge than we do today. Things are not getting better, they're getting worse. So anything that you can do, like
cumulative effects. Yeah. So
water
recently,
and everything.
Right. Another thing, I think the thing everybody thinks about is cancer, and 1 in 3 people are going to get cancer in their lifetime. And a lot of this is environmental. You'll read everything, environmental exposures.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Obesity, smoking, and alcohol are probably the 3 biggest things that lead to it. But think of all these endocrine disruptors and changes over time too. So
the drinking and smoking, those can absolutely be mediators to a lot of these things too. But I mean, you've seen the commercials. Call this number if you've had lymphoma from this powder, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But
Talc
thanks to the
and-
gross laws, where they don't have to even disclose what harmful things are in there until something potentially happens and someone's sued. But anyway, clean up your environment, guys. Little things matter, such as air doctors in your house or some type of purifier, better water intake. No microplastics in water bottles. We consume up to a credit card a week now in microplastic between what we eat and what we breathe. That is horrific. They're finding that in brain scans and autopsies post-mortem.
Yeah, 5 grams of plastic, I think, which is the weight of a credit card.
Not good. So anyway, check back to that episode if you want to clean up your endocrine system and decrease your toxic exposure.
Episode 3 was testosterone, more than just a sex hormone. This one got a lot of interesting feedback, especially from our females.
Yeah.
We sort of described it as the get shit done hormone, right? Testosterone impacts motivation, mood, cognition, muscle, metabolism, cardiovascular health. Libido is probably the big one, both men and women. It is not just a male hormone. Mm-hmm. It is not just a sex hormone. Testosterone is big, right? And modern levels are declining, especially in our men. And actually, not necessarily testosterone, but androgens are sort of increasing in women. We want to focus it in the right channels.
Yeah, very beneficial. And newsflash, females, you guys can be on testosterone too. Of course, it's not FDA approved. However, it is very beneficial, and they do have that out as an off-label use that we can use that for. And we use that for so many different things. And this is physiological female dosing. I'm not talking about, testosterone
men's and women's
for
dosing are much different,
for your husband. It's very different. So physiological female dosing. I mean, my females, if there's 2 hormones that my females absolutely love, it is their progesterone and their testosterone. They feel better mental clarity, mood issues, stability, of course, increase in libido, neurocognitive functioning. They just feel better. Of course, huge muscle preservation if they're hitting the gym
especially
really
as
hard.
you're getting older. Please remember that.
Absolutely.
We say it all the time. What you do with your body, with your muscles, with your health, what you do in your 20s, 30s, and 40s influences the life you're going to live in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond.
Yeah. So if you want to tune in on all the things that testosterone can do specifically for females, tune into our testosterone
Episode
podcast.
3. And remember that it is a whole body hormone. It is
Yeah.
not just a bedroom hormone.
And just a side note for my peri and post people, it doesn't fall off the bridge like, progesterone and estradiol do a lot quicker. Testosterone will have a slow, steady decrease and then kind of level out. However, these decreases are enough for women to feel like they need benefit, especially when progesterone and estradiol have plummeted as well. Bringing some higher levels of testosterone have been very beneficial for a lot of my patients.
Episode 4, we talked about ADHD. We were kind of focusing more on the adult population here. We see this sort of overdiagnosis and over-medication of it, and people are like, oh, we're just getting better at, diagnoses and treating it. And I think my opinion is that, yes, absolutely, some people have ADHD, and yes, I do think the prevalence has increased, probably a result of the world we live in.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily better diagnosing techniques. I think more awareness amongst people, more children who had ADHD diagnosed in the 90s that are now grown into adults. But the bottom line is you at least need to look at or recognize lifestyle factors that can contribute and or mimic true ADHD that may not necessarily need some sort of stimulant as a medication.
Totally agree. Imagine yourself, plucked off 50 years ago in a totally different scenario. You're not super stressed. You're not running a business. You're not a CEO. You don't have 1,000 kids. Would you be super stressed? Because a lot of times every single day I'm like, am I ADHD or am I just overstressed? And chances are I'm overstressed. I get pulled away from tasks. We live on a huge farm, running a business, have 4 kids, which are absolute crazies at all times. So just keep in check your environment. And I would never, ever take any of these stimulants because there's other things that I can do to rein in my, mental clarity. Okay, let me make a better list. Let me get more workout or sauna or relaxing time or whatever that is.
But at the same time, that's you. And there are people where the stimulant can be beneficial. We talk about medications as tools.
Yep.
So I think that was the point of our episode is ADHD is real. These medications can be very helpful. They don't come without side effects. And obviously addiction is one of the biggest, issues. So we just want to encourage people to don't just jump to an ADHD diagnosis. Really look at root cause health, really examine your lifestyle, your social system, your support, and other things that you can do. We've talked about all the things, reducing screen time before bed, good sleep, use wearables, which we talk about to track, morning sun, breathing exercises, try things, before maybe just saying, oh, I think I have ADHD, I'm going to get on a medication. Because we mentioned this too, it's very easy to get on a medication. It's very easy to get diagnosed with it. There's multiple websites you can go out there, fill out a little survey, and boom, they diagnose you with ADHD and write you the med. Do some work first if you can.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. All right. Next one.
Episode 5. We talked about macrometabolism a little bit. This one stemmed from the line that drives me nuts, like social media posts that drive you nuts about people, shaming GLPs and whatnot. What drives me nuts is the people who say a calorie is just a calorie. Calories in equal calories out. And I 100% used to think that. Absolutely.
100%. Let me tell you, let's take it back probably almost a decade ago, maybe 9 years ago, where my husband and I got into an argument about that. And he's like, it's calorie intake. It's simple math, calories in, calories out. And I'm like, but no, it's not. And then once you understand this, like he said, it can make you irate because there's so much that go into a calorie is just a calorie that you have a completely different perspective on it. And so when somebody says that, you just want to slap them because you're like, there's so much you don't know.
Yeah. So you got to remember that not all calories are metabolically equal, first and foremost. The amount of calories in protein is different than carbohydrates and alcohol. So you have to keep those kinds of things separate. The other thing to consider is that proteins, carbs, fats, they create different hormonal responses. They signal different mediators. They signal different genes and enzymes. And for example, proteins actually use more energy to use and build than carbohydrates and fats do. So a calorie is not a calorie. And then we've also talked about the downstream effects from calories. So I've mentioned this in many of my social media posts and on here, but an example is advanced glycated end products, right? So when you heat certain proteins and sugars, you get what's called this glycated end product that has a reaction in your body. There's an actual receptor for it. They're called RAGE receptors for advanced glycated end products. And I mentioned in another podcast, there's actually pharmaceutical companies looking at immunizations or whatever you want to call it, receptor blockers, immunomodulators that would block these receptors so that you could still eat them and they wouldn't have a response, which
like
is
meaning
just
still
crazy,
eating your glazed donuts and sticky buns. I'm like, what are we
so
doing?
anyway, the point is, eating different foods is absolutely triggers different responses in your body, different neurohormonal pathways. Some are more likely higher glycemic index. They're going to lead to more insulin production, more fat storage. A calorie is not a calorie. All calories are not created equal. Please understand the best calories are from your real, whole, nutrient-dense foods.
And there's some people in like the body lifting world and the weight loss world and all the other things who will basically take it to the grave that a calorie is a calorie. There was somebody I used to follow that she was so aggressive. She's like, it's not that hard. And she would just go into it. And I'm like, yes, no, it's different. You can absolutely still lose weight eating 100 or 1,000 calories of donuts a day versus 1,000 calories of fruits and vegetables. But long-term benefit is going to come right around and bite you in the butt.
We talk about metabolic destruction. If you're losing weight or you're sustaining your 1,200 calories a day on Krispy Kreme donuts
or
versus
McDonald's or whatever,
versus 1,200 calories a day from, steak, hamburger, dairy, lentils, beans, if you're vegetarian, whatever, it's a completely different metabolic effect on your body. And I promise you, the person eating the 1,200 calories a day of the processed, sugary garbage is going to suffer the standard American diseases, the shortened lifespan, more rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis,
more hair
cardiovascular
loss, more
disease,
acne, more brain fog, more energy depletion. All
but
of that.
Dang it, their weight will be the same as yours.
Yeah, but darn it, that scale's going down. So what's it matter how we feel, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. We can do it the right way and still feel amazing. So just remember that. All right.
Episode 6 was cool. We talked about KPIs for the body, right? Everyone at work nowadays, we have meetings all the time for key performance indicators. And we were like, let's talk about these for the body for a minute, because we're with ourselves 24 hours a day. And I never used to check in with my own KPIs, right?
Yep.
So we kind of talked about the wearables in this episode. Mia uses an Oura ring. I do a Whoop band, but these are really great tools out there nowadays. And you don't have to have these, but they do help you in that process. And what we're talking about are things like your sleep, your resting heart rate, your heart rate variability, your recovery, which is sort of like an algorithm on some of these things, but your body composition, not just your weight, but your percentage of visceral fat and skeletal muscle mass. These are all super important metrics.
Very. And honestly, my Oura ring gives me a lot of really awesome data. It can tell me, even up to 24 to 48 hours before I get a cold or sickness or flu. It monitors how well I'm sleeping, how deep sleep I'm getting, how restored I am. It will give you, keys on today you need to be more restful. Nope, you're super well rested. Hit a good workout today. Like something like that. And it's been very beneficial to me, especially because I'm not kidding when I say I can narrow it down based on what my Oura ring is saying versus how I'm feeling is very, very on point.
And this isn't a pitch, we're not getting paid by either of these people.
That'd be great if we
the trackables have really helped me, someone who's actually very in tune with my own health, become even better. And the reason that we mentioned these and why I bring them up again here is because to me, having this on your wrist or your finger or whatever it's going to be is so much. I mean, I can't even say maybe 1,000 times more valuable than your annual labs from your doctor, right? And I'm not saying don't get them, especially if they're monitoring things like a hemoglobin A1C, fasting glucose, liver enzymes, sure. But when you go to the doctor and say, I don't feel good, and they get some basic labs, that tells you essentially nothing compared to what these things can tell you every day of your life. So anyway.
Absolutely. Tread in your own data, guys. You have to be the best advocate for yourself.
Learn your body.
When your PCP sees you for 10 minutes once a year, you think that they're going to put a good enough health picture together versus an entire year of data each time that you go back.
And this is, you are going to see in the future, primary care, traditional Western medicine incorporating this data into different algorithms, but it's going to revolve around prescription medication, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sure. But you can even sync if your continuous glucose monitor to this now. There's multiple things. I think the newest Oura ring, and only because I looked into it, I think is it blood pressure that it does?
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I need to look into
the newest gen will do blood pressure.
Wild.
Yeah.
I don't really know how.
I kind of want to check that out. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. But anyway.
Also, just if anybody's watching this on camera, I have soap stuck in the hair on my leg. So if you see that, please don't make fun of me, but I keep itching it. And if you can see it on camera.
Did you try to pull it out?
I did. It hurts really bad.
I thought it was sawdust.
Yeah. I was using we have a honey soap bar, and I was using the end of it in the shower last night, and it was pure mush, and it was stuck in my armpits and on my legs. And I just have this chunk stuck on me. So.
Mind you, I'm not going to lie, guys. This guy used a fourth of a bar of soap in the shower last night. He went to hand it back, and I was like, where's the soap? I'm like, you used that entire thing? Shout out to Nana's Honey. That's where we get our soap for. We love how it makes our skin feel, but it's just pure organic.
Yeah.
Or no, it's pure
She's
honey.
not, no, it's not organic, but it's local honey.
Honey something with it. There's something else that she puts in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, super soft, but don't mind Tim pulling his hairs out. All right. Next, let's talk about the
Episode 8.
brain-gut axis.
Oh, sorry. Episode 7, brain-gut axis.
Yeah, we got one more.
Yeah.
This one was a cool one as well. I think this one is a little bit maybe more scientific-y here, but the gut and brain communicate continuously all day long.
If you don't know that it exists, you should know there is something called a brain-gut axis. It is real. It's like your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, your kidney axis, right? All of these things communicate. Your brain and your gut obviously communicate.
Yeah.
Nobody really knew this until, a couple decade ago. So it's out there now.
Yeah, remember, not a single organ in your body really is going to function in full isolation. It's always working with or depending on or something with another organ. So
an important thing to remember about this is the microbiome. What a key player your microbiome, the bacteria that live in your gut, plays in this brain-gut axis, and why we harp on gut health so much, right? This is involved in everything, but specifically think of anxiety, depression, food cravings, metabolic dysfunction. The autoimmune diseases a lot of them can start at the gut. We talk about leaky gut all the time. It's microbial dysfunction at its the effects of microbial dysfunction. So anyway, the brain gut axis is real. It's a really interesting episode. If you guys want to circle back, check it out, episode 7.
And that goes back to mental health. So a lot of times you can't separate the mental health from the gut health. So meaning if you have gut issues or mental health issues, making sure that both of them, you have to assess the gut first and foremost. Because of that, the way that they communicate through that vagus nerve, they're constantly talking to each other. And if you have a really mad gut, you're likely going to have an altered mental state. Whatever that looks like, anxiety, depression, restlessness, brain fog, something, it's going to alter neurocognitive functioning on some negative impact.
Absolutely. Episode 8 was cool. We talked about lifting weight. It's the second time we've kind of done an episode on muscle, the importance of muscle weightlifting. This one we focused a little bit more on muscle as a metabolic organ and resistance training as a way to improve health and longevity. Yeah. Again, great episode. We went over some stats in it. Remember, strength predicts longevity. That's a fact, right? Muscle mass, lean skeletal muscle mass predicts longevity, predicts health, predicts independence. It's all out there. It's all connected.
Yeah, the episode was called Does Lifting Heavy Help You Live Longer? And the answer is yes. And we dive into all the reasons why. The lower the muscle mass you have, the less metabolically stable you're going to be, the less or slower metabolism you're going to have, the less bone density, more, fragility, all of the things that matter when you want to preserve that muscle mass. It's going to keep you alive a lot longer the more muscle mass
alive.
you have.
And for me, one of the things I focus on is independence. Alive and independent. Right. Like, I don't just want to be alive in my 80s. I want to be able to live on my own, to shower, to get off the toilet, to get out of bed, to dress myself. And I see way too many people in the emergency department and in my line of work that can't do that. And again, I think back and I say, it's too late to change it at that point. I mean, it's never too late to make some changes, but it's too late in your 80s to make the overall change. It's what you did in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s that got you there. Yeah. And so we really want to stress that to our listening audience.
Yeah, I mean, you're born into this world in diapers, and if I can prevent going out in diapers, that would be great. So that's my goal.
Yep, I agree. And remember, there's a key term here, sarcopenia. That's the age-related loss of muscle. To an extent, guys, I don't care who you are, Arnold Schwarzenegger's lost muscle in the last 30 years, right? Like, you're gonna lose muscle, but if you are aware, if you are making lifestyle decisions, protein-heavy diets, lifting weights to the best of your ability, you will minimize that muscle mass loss.
Yep, great episode. Actually, it's probably one of my favorites. All right, the next one.
Yeah, we can briefly chat about this. I mean, this is the extent of what we talk about all the time. This was episode 9, and it's just kind of talking about how medicine is changing. And our goal is to be at the forefront of that and to bring that to you, our listening audience. In the traditional Western medical world, obesity is finally being reclassified as a chronic biological disease. The good docs, the progressive docs are starting to understand it's more than just a willpower problem, right? It is a neuroendocrine issue. It is a physiologic problem, social, emotional. So anyway, GLP-1 therapies, we've mentioned reshape medicine, technology and wearables that we just spoke about, and personalized medicine is expanding because of clinics like us.
Yeah. And I know Tim is saying episode 9. This is the second season, so I'm just going to shout out those numbers just in case it's off in like Spotify. This one was called Medicine is Changing Faster Than Doctors Realize. That was episode technically 37, I believe.
Overall.
Of our overall.
No problem.
All right, next we got hydration. This was episode 38. This one was cool because we really underestimate the power of water and what that means. Major takeaways in this episode. Hydration is significantly more than just drinking water. These are things that help support electrolytes and hormones, and cellular balance truly matters on a day-to-day basis. And overhydration can be just as problematic as dehydration, although it's not likely going to be
Yeah,
overhydrated in
for
the
most
standard
people, right?
American.
Right.
And water regulation is highly controlled physiological process. So bottom line, hydration is chemistry, not just water intake, and the source of the water matters. Your tap water, go to ewg.org. You can type in your zip code. You can see the basic tap water that you're drinking in your house. By the way, it's disgusting. It'll show you flagging on how toxic things are. And I'm not talking just like, oh, one time over the limit. No, we're talking like 200 to 400 times the amount of some of these chemicals in your water, in your city water, and it's quite literally frightening. So
Yeah, and we did a little bit of a myth busting section at the beginning of that episode, and one of the highlights from that was talking about how coffee, or the myth is that coffee dehydrates you, because we're lovers of coffee. We support coffee drinking. Again, if you can get organic whole bean coffee, single source, that's the best. But it's mostly a myth. Remember, coffee is about 98% water, but it can contribute to hydration. It also can contribute to dehydration, as caffeine has a mild diuretic effect, but regular coffee drinkers will usually develop a tolerance to that pretty quickly. My point is not to say that you should be drinking 64 ounces of coffee per day to get water. My point is to say that it's okay to have your morning cup of coffee. Try to get organic, as we said. Try not to put all the foofy stuff in it. But that was probably one of the biggest feedbacks that we got. Another thing to remember from that episode is a lot of people want to turn to sports drinks. Please remember, those are loaded with sugar. Even when you get the sugar-free versions, those are usually loaded with aspartame, other preservatives, bad things for you. Try your very best to drink water. I personally like to add clean electrolytes. There's you can find clean electrolyte recipes to make at home with things like Himalayan salt, lime, and lemon juice.
Coconut water.
We have some good brands we like on Amazon. Just Ingredients is one.
We're potentially launching, we're working to see if we can launch a good one that we like as well. So pay
On
attention to our
rixahealth.com. Yes. But anyway, the point is, it's not bad to necessarily add some stuff to your water. I personally do not drink 70 ounces of plain water a day. I do add some clean electrolytes. I'll add some lemon juice,
Or
lime juice.
creatine.
I
Yeah,
put
our
creatine
staples.
in it. Yeah. So anyway, just kind of, and then another thing is a lot of people ask about like hydrogen ion water and some of the other things like that. And just be careful. Most of those things are more marketing than anything. If you could get them in the purest form, if you could keep hydrogen from dissipating, depending on what you're talking about, then they'd be fantastic. But the reality just isn't the case. So don't spend too much money on those kinds of crazy things.
Yep.
Focus on the basics.
The next one was episode 39, and this was parasites. You
Woo-hoo.
guys, this podcast took off for parasites. You guys loved the creepy crawler critters inside of us. Major takeaways for this: parasites are incredibly more common than most people realize. In fact, when I even bring up parasites, they think I'm an alien when I talk about it. And I'm like, no, really, like we all have parasites. It's just if your body is able to tolerate them. They can affect and impact so many systems of the body: digestion, immunity, energy, skin, mood, nutritional status, blood support, iron, ferritin, all the things. And conventional testing is missing this case tremendously, but it's very hard to test for. So we go by some labs and some symptoms and kind of put the story together. But
Yeah.
functional medicine does approach this much more than conventional.
The other thing, I wanted to mention where you might get some of these things. Of course, we live on a farm. We're exposed to all different kind of animal poop, sushi, rare meats, porks, wild games, raw
Pets,
fish.
if you have cats,
pets.
dogs in your house, you got parasites.
We are all going to come in contact with parasites, and we do advocate there is some benefit for most people to consider a parasite cleanse at some point. But we also wanted to say you don't necessarily need to be on year-round parasite cleanses. You don't necessarily need big prescription things such as ivermectin, even though we are, in favor of that medication in the right circumstance. And you don't need to spend a ton of money on these parasite cleanses online. First and foremost, think of your food, think of your diet. There are so many herbs and even light supplements that you can use. For example, garlic, clove, turmeric all have anti-parasitic effects. Mia likes to use black walnut, wormwood, pumpkin seeds have parasitic effects. Oregano and thyme, very, very basic and hardcore anti-parasitics.
in high doses.
If you look at I looked up, someone sent me a link and asked me to review a leading brand of a parasite cleanse, and it had 2 ingredients in it. It was black walnut and oregano oil.
And I'm sure it was
and it was like
astronomical.
$80 or something for a bottle of
dumb.
it. So
You
anyway,
can get it highly concentrated in doses, in droppers. Although, once again, even though that's an herbal supplement, you can also eat thy medicine, which
yes.
means cook a little bit more with garlic, support, have your little daily dose of some parasite killers. So when you think about all of these things, if that strikes you where you eat sushi, you have animals, you're outside, you live, in America, just basically anybody is going to have parasites. So just be mindful. Sometimes, what you're eating could be eating you back.
Agreed. All right. The next episode was episode 11 of season 2 and overall episode 40. And this one was kind of cool. We went into the 5R framework of gut health, which is something I do talk about with quite a bit of my patients. Again, super into gut health here personally. You don't need to know these 5Rs, but it's cool to know the 5R exists. Go back and listen to the podcast. And if you're into it, Google 5R. But it's basically remove, replace, reinoculate, repair, rebalance. And these sort of have overlap and you're doing different things along the way. But first, you need to remove offending pathogens, offending things, your processed foods, your alcohols, all the things that are going to cause a problem in your gut. Then, of course, you need to replace things that need to be replaced. Digestive enzymes, if you need it. Acid, if let's say you've been like me, you're on PPIs for 15 years, you need to put that back in.
Beneficial microbiome that might be depleted. I just got one of my patients was having a horrific time with gut health. We got a 3-day stool sample on her. We did a GI map. Mind you, she's been trying to get this fixed for years. Nobody can find out what's wrong. I get her lab results back last week. She has almost zero pancreatic enzymes, and her gut bacteria is almost non-existent. So every single time that she eats, she bloats. She's not breaking down the right things. She's not, having the enzymes to break things down. She's not processing fats, all the things. So we are doing this exact framework where we come in, we will help support, wipe out what's needed. She also had SIBO, so many things. So remember, if you aren't feeling well, you always, in functional medicine, the first thing that we address is, well, how you pooping? How's your gut? How you eating? All the things, because there's so many things that if they go wrong in the gut, it can affect you systematically. So
yeah, and the 5th R is rebalance. And I just want to mention that rebalance has to do with your life, your stressors, your sleep schedule, your cognitive function. So just
mental,
remember
spiritual, emotional.
that plays into the gut as well. It's actually an R in the 5R, super important.
Yep.
All
right.
right.
So the next one is going to be talking about mold. Episode 41 of our podcast here. Mold is an invisible toxin. Now, it's definitely not asymptomatic for most. When you have mold exposure, you're pretty symptomatic, at least for a lot of my patients that can't figure out what's going on. But major takeaways on this episode, it can affect everything: energy, cognition, immunity, hormones, metabolism. Mycotoxins will drive chronic disease. They are tough little boogers. They disguise themselves. They're a really hard time breaking through and getting out of that mitochondria. They will wreak havoc on your body. And even the exposure is often hidden. Why? Well, this is in the walls. This is in the vents. This can be airborne. This can be in the food that we're eating. It's not that we're like when someone says, well, I'm not around any mold. I'm like, well, of course you are. But it's just if your body has the ability to remove some of that, or if it builds up in your body, takes house, develops those mycotoxins or the byproduct release, and then you become symptomatic. I just had a patient, husband and wife. She was like, how is this mold? My husband doesn't have any symptoms. I'm like, well, same reason that I got, my other family member tested for, and she's critical in mold, but her husband isn't. Your body has the ability to heal itself, but it has to have the right environment. Then you have a little bit of a genetic component to that, but basically your body is, the ability to handle these toxins. So she's critical in mold, had the hives, the tachycardia, not sleeping well at night, weird things in her house, and her husband was fine. So just remember, just because your entire household might be symptomatic doesn't mean that you yourself, if you're dealing with some of these issues, it can come get you.
I agree. And some things to remember are mold is always in the differential diagnosis, especially when people have tried a lot of things. I can't figure it out. You might not really notice the mold in your house or in your place of work. And you have to really think, like, is this a damp environment? Are there reasons I could be exposed to mold? Pets are another reason. Maybe you travel. Usually it's more of chronic exposure though. But the point is, the sinus issues, the gut issues, the immune system issues, when everything's been done, when everything's been checked,
the
skin
hives.
issues. Yeah. At the end of the day, you do have to at least consider this. And if it's not in your mind, you're not going to think about it. So check out that episode if you get a chance. It was also a pretty cool, popular one. It's episode 41 overall.
Yep. All right. The next one is what your doctor might be missing. That was episode 42. Major takeaways on this. Normal is not the same as optimal. I hear this every day. Oh, my doctor said my labs are normal, and I my immediate response is that, well, let me see what that means for them, because it might mean something different for me. Normal and optimal are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Many patients will fall into this gap between disease and wellness, and just because they're normal, and I'm using my air quotes, doesn't mean they're optimal. It could actually mean a signal to disease progression pending the trends.
Right. Some commonly missed things on these labs for you to be aware of are thyroid dysfunction, insulin resistance. Again, picking that up early before the numbers say it. When your hemoglobin's 5.6, which is not considered prediabetes until you're 5.7. When your fasting glucose is 99, which is not considered prediabetes until you're 100, right? That's what optimal is. That's what picking this up early is. So, there are some markers we like: HSCRP, ferritin patterns, homocysteine, myeloperoxidase. There's different things we can do for different systems to jump in deeper, but just be aware.
And just a quick thing on here, I had a patient a couple weeks ago that I'm like, you know what, if you want to go to your PCP for this, that's fine. I'll write down what I want you to get and send it to your PCP. She emailed me back last week and said, screenshot her doctor's response, and it was basically saying, why would we get all of these? These are way too many labs for you. Don't, he goes, you don't need these labs for your yearly. You're doing too many labs. Mind you, that I'm like, well, forget it. Who cares? I mean, I don't need his permission. Here's your lab request. Go get it done. She's abnormal. And some of these things that I ordered, and I'm like, I was like, please send that back to your provider and tell him thank you for his help. Like, it's just insane.
It's just this mentality.
Why?
And
Why
listen,
deny him?
I am cool with conserving resources, and like, I don't want to CT scan everybody that comes into the ER. I don't want to order 100 tests that aren't needed, but you also still need to consider, if no one's ever checked your free T4 and your free T3, then yes, it's indicated. If you're 30 years old and no one's ever done a hemoglobin A1C, yes, it's indicated.
Or fasting insulin or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we need to check these things. And sure, maybe then you can go a few years. We're not saying you need them every year, but it's thinking about it. And especially, it's one thing if you say, I feel great, I eat great, my weight is good, my energy is good, I might not go digging into your labs. But when you're going to your doctor and you're saying, I don't feel good, I have a problem, but then they turn around and say, this isn't indicated, to me, that's just not a good approach.
Yeah, and because these labs are reasonable. If we go out of pocket, I can get a really big panel on somebody for maybe $140. Like,
we can get a huge comprehensive panel for $300. I mean, everything.
That's like everything. Wild, and we don't need to do that much.
I had someone
just yearly
the other day who I'm rechecking their hormones, and I told her it was going to be $100 because I was getting a couple other things. Just hormones are even cheaper than that. I told her it was going to be $100, and she's like, "Oh my God, these same tests last time were $600 through my insurance and my lab and stuff."
That's what, when I tell them, I said, feel free to call your insurance, but I'll put my dollar on us that we're cheaper. Yeah. So remember, be an advocate for yourself. Your doctor might be missing some things. Just because they tell you some of these things doesn't mean you always have to agree. You should never, ever, ever have to fight your provider for labs. You can come to us. You can go to, actually LabCorp closed. You can go to any other website out there and get your own labs. Quest. You don't need your provider's permission to know more about your lab values. These are not drugs that we're asking for. These are not narcotics we're asking for. We are asking for simple labs. So if you find a doctor that isn't agreeing with you, well, then come to us. We'll help you.
All right. So episode 43 or 15 in season 2 was called inflammaging. This was really cool. I love this topic, how talking about the slow burn that's killing you from within, and it's inflammation. And we're not going to get into check it out. It's a great episode to listen to, but it's what we say all the time so that we don't have to rehash this a lot here. It's the environmental exposures. It's the processed foods, the seed oils that we eat. It's the sedentary lifestyle. It's the lack of sleep, the increased stress. All of this is inflammation. And I think what it centers around in the core of this is understanding that the root of most disease is inflammation, but that's still not the answer. It's not like, oh, I got inflammation. That's my diagnosis. Right. It's like, okay, now what is causing the inflammation and how can we modify it? We may never eliminate it, but how can we modify it? And I think if you understand that heart attack, that stroke, that autoimmune disease, all of that started as inflammation somewhere in your body at one point. How can we minimize that throughout our life?
Because it's in really big depth here, because I don't think a lot of people understand. In fact, I know a lot of people don't understand the process that goes into once your body is living in an inflamed state, how many processes are triggered off with the body, the cytokines, all of these different pathways that can really alter almost anything in our body, which is why I talk to my patients so much on, we have to address any inflammation that's brewing in your life, because if you have chronic inflammation, it will open up potential for almost any disease process. Now, if I'm super inflamed and Tim's super inflamed, inflamed, the process of what disease we develop could be absolutely different. Maybe mine is dementia. Maybe Tim is some form of cancer. Who knows? Or Alzheimer's, or whatever the case may be. I guess I should say more of,
Cognitive.
Yeah, cognitive. Those are the things that we don't know, but I don't want to find out, I
Yeah,
can tell
I don't
you
know
risk
what
factors.
I'm more predisposed to. I
Right.
don't know some of my genetic markers compared to hers,
Right.
and what genes would be turned on by NF-kappa B, the inflammatory gene in my body, versus hers.
Yeah.
Also, there's other things that play into a role. If she's a better methylator, that could protect her more.
Mm-hmm.
If I have issues with that as well, my homocysteine levels. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, but it starts with the exposures.
Inflammation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So keep that at bay. Inflammation wears many masks. So
And
most of
we
us are
we
inflamed.
carried that into the next episode, which would be 44, where we talked about the blue zones. Again, this was a really cool episode. I understand, like, you might not want to hear an entire podcast about the blue zones, but what we looked at was some specific things in each blue zone that led to why they are a blue zone. And a lot of them overlap, but they also each had specific things. And just to recap them real quick, Sardinia, Italy; Okinawa, Japan; the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica; Icaria, Greece; and Loma Linda, California are your 5 blue zones of the world.
We should make it a goal to take the next 5 years and do a blue zone every year.
That would be
That'd
great.
be
I would
awesome.
absolutely love that.
We should open that up to our guests.
Again, though,
people.
I think the focus here, just to sort of recap, is it each blue zone, no matter what it's kind of known for or what's different, is they live purpose-driven life. They're generally eating better. They have more social contact. They're not sedentary. They have exposure to sunlight. It all comes back to the concepts we talk about all the time. They have family. They have community.
That lifestyle blend.
Yes.
And for those of you just right off the rip who don't even know what blue zones are, it's just the longest lived population with less disease and a longer lifespan. And that's why they're studying them. There's reasons why.
Yep, exactly. Better metabolic health when you look at their labs compared to ours.
They're
just
moving,
everything.
community, they're gardening, they're out in the exposure all day.
And I'll give you a hint. They're not eating Quest protein chips for breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
or Premier protein bar or
right.
shakes.
Yeah, agreed. So it's an entire lifestyle. And I actually did think that was a cool episode. If you have some time and you're interested,
yeah, we were on
check
the
that
fence
out.
on doing it, but I'm like, you know what? I read a book on the blue zones years ago. I thought it was really cool. Let's just do it. So listen in if you feel intrigued.
Okay.
Next one is adrenal fatigue.
This is episode 45. And
Yep.
adrenal fatigue's not real, Mia.
Oh my gosh. You're talking to the wrong person. To come in and tell you what,
So
though,
it is not an official
it is not an
ICD-10
official
diagnosis. I
Correct.
don't believe, but-
However, major takeaways here, because let me tell you, the symptoms are real. So I think it's going to be almost like the type 3 diabetes, almost like the gut microbiome. I think it's going to be coming because there are so many, correlations to this. The issue is often the HPA axis dysregulation. Chronic stress will alter cortisol signaling. Stress will affect everything: metabolism, sleep, hormones, body composition, energy, brain fog, fatigue, all the things. And recovery requires addressing the entire system. You can quite literally go into thyroid dysfunction from adrenal fatigue, and it's not fun. It's very fatiguing.
I think we also stressed, and this is probably good to listen to, the problem with chronic cortisol, right? So acute cortisol is fuel. It exists for a reason. It's part of our flight or flight. It can get us up and going when we need it. And we need it. Morning cortisol. We need stress response. It's that chronic cortisol, the chronic elevations of stress, deprivation of sleep, poor diet. And especially when you pair chronic cortisol plus insulin, that's when you're going to start to equal pure metabolic dysfunction. So
absolutely.
cool episode.
Yeah, remember, your body is always asking every single second if it feels safe, and that is huge, because whether you're running from your toddler or running from a bear, your body has not a lick of difference on which one it's running from. So just
Agreed.
keep that in mind.
Episode 18 of season 2 and 46 overall was another favorite of mine. We talked about ivermectin, and specifically I spent a little time talking about the death of the scientific method, which is something I've really wanted to get off my chest for a while because I just get so tired
Our
of
podcasts are our therapy.
the whole trust the science thing. And it's so hard for me to explain to people who don't have any understanding of this that trust the science means absolutely nothing. I mean, science is what you want it to be in today's day and age. You can pay for science. You can manipulate science. You can buy results. You can bury results. I mean, science is very much a product of the people who buy it. Yeah. So at any rate, we did talk about ivermectin, which is cool. One thing I want to be very transparent. We don't think every parasite cleanse needs ivermectin. Every functional medicine patient, it's not going to prevent all cancers. But we did talk about the fact that it is a worldwide amazing drug that's been used to save and change countless lives. It won the Nobel Prize. Super important medication for Earth.
Yeah.
And the fact that the role that it got during the COVID pandemic, the corner that it was buried in due to what we believe were financial reasons driven by members of the United States government, just really wasn't fair to that medication.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was an interesting episode. Maybe it was more of a rant. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe one of these days we will really dive into the rants of what pissed us off in the last 5 years of medicine. But we don't yet want to be blocked, so we'll continue.
I agree.
I
don't want to get knocked off.
We don't
want
to only do 48 episodes and get canned, so we'll save that controversy. All right, the last one and the ivermectin one, you guys, thank you. That got lots of shares and likes, as well as the parasites. I think those were our top runners. Mold got a good one too, so we appreciate it. And then the last episode we just did, episode 47 on cardiovascular disease, which is the number one killer, the number one leading cause of death.
Agreed. And that's another personal favorite episode of mine. I really enjoy talking about cardiovascular disease. I do want to bring more awareness to it. I was speaking with a women's health expert. She's a gynecologist. Her name's Maria Sophocles. She's going to be actually at our Women's Health Summit, and she will be a guest on our podcast in the fall. She released a book called The Bedroom Gap. Anyway, she's also done a TED Talk that has over 1 million views. I was chatting with her, and the funny thing is we were like, hey, what are some things you could mention on the podcast for women's health? And we both almost at the same time said cardiovascular disease because it's so underrecognized. Women focus on breast cancer, hormone health, thyroid, whatever you're worried about as a woman, but you forget about the most obvious thing staring you in the face.
The leading cause of what's going to kill you, likely kill
you.
The
leading cause, more than all cancers combined. Women die of cardiovascular disease.
Yep. And we went in that on this episode saying, like, ask the normal female, like a random person, hey, if you were afraid of dying of one thing, what would it be? And majority of the people are going to tell you some type of cancer. And it's like, well, do you know what you have a high probability of dying from is not actually cancer, it's cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, the 5-year survivability rate for breast cancer now is like over 95%. Yeah. It might be like 98% even. And but that's what people are worried about, but cardiovascular disease will kill you.
But let's be worried about them all and clean up your lifestyle, which is really what we hope to help, that this podcast is really getting out to educate anybody that it could benefit from. And we're not saying go balls to the wall and upturn your life unless you want to. That would be
if you want to, great.
But just pluck away at the low-hanging fruit that you can constantly get better at and better at and better at. And it's not a destination like, boop, here, I did it. It is a freaking journey. And every single day you're going to have to make these decisions on little things that you can do. Better soap, better water for your house, better laundry detergent, how to clean up your kids' diet. It has to start in your home, and then the food, and knowledge is power. And let me tell you, your provider and out there, you're just not going to get it the way that we need change much faster than it's coming. So hence the podcast. Everybody stay tuned. We are talking about something very important, so don't get off of this podcast yet. We are going to be talking about our summit. Our summit. So hang tight. But anyway, to finish that up, heart disease, episode 48.
Yeah. And episode 48 is this one that we're doing now.
I'm sorry, episode 47.
Was heart disease, And the last thing we talked about in there was really all the different mediators, the things that lead to heart disease. We really got to the root cause of what does that inflammation that we talked about lead to. That's really what we were explaining. And we did mention cholesterol. It's worth rehashing that cholesterol has become the mainstream, the thing you think of with heart disease, but it's just one. It's one tree in a forest. It's one marker that's used. Now, we did also delineate a very important distinction. If you have known cardiovascular disease or if you have had a heart attack, cholesterol does become a more important tool based on the data that is out there for you to monitor, track, and prevent future illness. If you have not yet been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease, there's many other things that are just as important as cholesterol. So I did want to delineate that. And we mentioned in this episode, and I'm going to say it again, while we do not love statins, like it's not the first thing I'm going to jump to if my cholesterol is elevated. It's like anything else. It can be a tool. I have a close family member. He's getting a little bit older, and recently we ran his labs and they were absolutely awful in terms of cholesterol, triglycerides and stuff.
Yeah, they were.
I recommended a statin.
High.
I said, you got to go back on the statin, And so I just want to say we are not completely against that. We do use tools in medicine, but we also want to get to the root cause lifestyle approach.
Yeah.
And there's more than just cholesterol when it comes to heart disease.
Yeah. And mind you, we're not talking a slight bump. We're talking, triglycerides in the 380s.
Yeah, there's a
bad.
difference, 50 years ago, an elevated total cholesterol was 250 and now it's 200. So when you start to get into some of those things and you don't have cardiovascular disease, that's where I think the nuances come into play, and where you have to look at things like your relative risk, which is what companies market to you, versus your absolute risk, which is your actual risk of developing a disease. There's different things you have to look at when you're deciding on the treatment path you're going to go.
Yep. All right. So once again, before we wrap it up, we'll talk a little bit about the summary of this, and then we have a very important little message for you.
Let's just get to it.
You want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good. Our entire, the wrap up of season 2 of season 1 combined of everything we say is that you do not have to rely on the traditional medical system for prevention of illness. Okay. It is a good system when you become sick, when you need help, when something's wrong, but you should not rely on them. Just like you shouldn't rely on your car insurance provider to keep you from getting in an accident. You should call them when you get in one. And so we want to give you the knowledge to help keep your body from getting in an accident, keep your body from getting ill, developing the cancer, developing the cardiovascular disease. And that's what we hope you take away from this.
Yep. So just a reminder, we're going to take a little break, probably about an 8-week-ish break. Plenty of time for you guys to listen to every single podcast over again and change your life.
And share it with a friend.
Yeah. And share it with a friend, and like, share, follow, and message us for any potential topics that you want us to talk about. But
we have a really cool summit coming up in Toledo, Ohio on October 10th, 2026 at the Glass City Center. We are putting on the first of annual Northwest Ohio Women's Health Summit geared towards all things women health. Sorry to our guys out there. Maybe in the future we're going to have something about that, but our audience is 65% female. That's what we're going to help right now.
And we have a
I think it was 70%
lineup. We have a killer lineup. We're still working on ironing out the fine lines and details. Our website will be up for tickets going on sale really quickly here, probably by the time that we
by the time this podcast is launched, the tickets
will be on sale. We expect for this to be an absolute sellout.
We have 2 keynote speakers.
Lots of vendors. So am I allowed to say?
Yep, you're allowed to say.
Okay, guys, I am so excited for this. For anybody who's in the hormone world, our key speaker is going to be Dr. Kelly Casperson, and she is a big
She's one of 2 keynote
She's
speakers.
one of the 2 keynote speakers. I'll talk about her, and you can talk about the other one. She's great. She's, had a New York best-selling book. She's probably one of my favorites that I have learned a ton from. Super excited, great down-to-earth personality. She's a female urologist who specializes in hormones, has a podcast as well called You Are Not Broken. She is one of my faves, so I am so excited.
You can check her out at kellycaspersonmd.com. She's also on social media. And the book that Mia mentioned is called The Menopause Moment.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically, she'll probably be speaking to us about that whole perimenopause, menopause transition. It's going to be a really interesting conversation, and we have some surprises lined up with her too that we'll announce later.
So excited. So she's a great one. And our other keynote speaker,
she's the morning keynote speaker.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Go ahead.
The afternoon keynote speaker is going to be Maria Sophocles. I mentioned her a little bit earlier. She recently released a book called The Bedroom Gap, and it sort of talks about, it's a roadmap for midlife women, couples, clinicians, anyone really wanting to understand and change how we age from a sexual standpoint, which again is very important. I mean, I think a lot of times people don't talk about sex after 50, right? And so I think this is going to be a really cool presentation and part of all women's health. She also has a TED Talk. I think it's also called The Bedroom Gap. Over 1 million views. You should check that out. We have some really cool like VIP and extra things that are going to be launched for both of these people, but they're amazing women advocates, women's health advocates, amazing speakers, very well trained. We really would like for people to check out this conference. We're going to have quite a few seats, over 500 available in person, and we're also going to sell live stream tickets for the event.
Absolutely. So anyway, please definitely like, share, and follow that to all your female friends. Make it a group day trip. Make it whatever you need to be. Let's learn about the body. Let's learn about how we can better ourselves and have a happier, healthier life with as little disease as we possibly can prevent.
Agreed. So. And I'm sorry I didn't mention this, but you can find Maria Sophocles at her website, mariasophocles.com. Yep. That's SOPHOCLES, mariasophoclesmd.com.
And then also check out our website, rixahealth.com. Shop tab for all of our supplements and things. So thank you so much for another great season. You guys have been great. Like, share, and follow, and we will catch you the next season, just a few weeks, guys.
Take it easy, listening fam.